Jacob's death did not arrive as a quiet tragedy. It detonated through every life connected to him, scattering grief, suspicion, and unfinished business in its wake. The circumstances surrounding his passing were already tangled with unanswered questions, whispers of betrayal, and conflicts that had never been resolved. For Naomi, the shock was paralyzing. She had prepared herself for many possible futures with Jacob: reconciliation, separation, confrontation, but never absence. Never silence, so absolute it felt violent. In the weeks that followed, Naomi existed in a fog of rituals and condolences, navigating public mourning while privately unraveling. The world expected her to grieve in a certain way, to embody dignified sorrow, to accept condolences with composure. She complied, because deviation would invite scrutiny. Yet beneath the surface, her grief was not simple. It was threaded with anger at Jacob for leaving chaos behind, anger at herself for unresolved arguments, anger at the fragile unpredictability of fate. The discovery of her pregnancy did not come as a revelation filled with tenderness. It arrived clinically, almost cruelly, through a routine check she nearly canceled. When the confirmation settled in, Naomi felt no immediate joy. Instead, a cold wave of disbelief washed over her. The timing felt obscene. The child was Jacob's, conceived during a period when their relationship was strained, when trust was already compromised by rumors and half-truths. This was not a storybook continuation of love. It was a complication layered onto catastrophe. The realization ignited a storm of conflicting impulses. Part of Naomi clung desperately to the pregnancy as a final connection to Jacob, a living fragment of the man she had loved and fought with. Another part recoiled from it, terrified of the implications. The child would anchor her permanently to a legacy that was far from stable. Jacob's death had triggered disputes over property, influence, and reputation. Introducing an heir into that volatile environment would not restore peace. It would amplify conflict. Jacob had not been universally admired. His ambition had cultivated rivals, and his personal life had left scars. There were unresolved financial entanglements, professional tensions, and strained family ties. Naomi understood that revealing the pregnancy would transform her from grieving partner into strategic variable. Her body, suddenly, was not only hers. It became evidence, leverage, potential threat. She kept the secret at first, out of instinct. Silence offered temporary control. In private moments, she placed her hand over her abdomen and tried to summon clarity. Was she protecting the child by hiding it, or protecting herself from scrutiny? The line blurred quickly. Each day she delayed disclosure, the weight of concealment grew heavier. Secrets, she knew, had a way of rotting from the inside. Complicating everything was the shadow of betrayal that had lingered over her final months with Jacob. There had been suspicions of infidelity never fully proven, never fully dismissed. Naomi had confronted him indirectly, sensing evasion without obtaining confession. His death froze those questions in place, denying her closure. Now, as she carried his child, she wrestled with the possibility that she had not been the only woman in his life. The thought poisoned what little comfort the pregnancy might have offered. Anger toward Jacob intensified. He had left her with uncertainty, with rumors she could not confirm or disprove, with responsibilities she had not agreed to shoulder alone. The pregnancy felt less like a gift and more like a final demand, a legacy imposed without consultation. She resented him for the power he still held over her choices even in death. Outside her private turmoil, Jacob's family maneuvered cautiously around the void he left. They grieved, but their grief was pragmatic. Legal advisors circled. Assets were evaluated. Control shifted subtly. Naomi observed these movements with growing apprehension. She understood that in this environment, vulnerability could be exploited. If she revealed the pregnancy, she risked being accused of opportunism, of manufacturing a claim to secure position. The possibility that others might question the paternity ignited humiliation. Naomi imagined whispered doubts, insinuations that the timing was convenient, that grief had been repurposed into strategy. The mere anticipation of such scrutiny hardened her resolve to keep the truth concealed at least until she could anticipate every angle. Yet secrecy came at a cost. Physically and emotionally, the strain manifested quickly. Morning sickness collided with public appearances. Fatigue compromised her composure. Each physical reminder of the pregnancy intensified the internal debate. She could not remain invisible indefinitely. Bodies tell stories even when mouths remain silent. The turning point emerged unexpectedly when fragments of Jacob's unfinished affairs resurfaced. Evidence of hidden transactions, encrypted communications, and questionable alliances surfaced through legal discovery. Naomi began to suspect that Jacob's death had not been entirely accidental. The possibility that foul play was involved reframed everything. If someone had benefited from his absence, the existence of an heir could threaten an advantage. Fear replaced hesitation. The pregnancy was no longer just a personal dilemma, it was a potential liability. If Jacob had been targeted, then carrying his child positioned Naomi at the center of unseen conflict. The child could represent inheritance, control, disruption of plans carefully set in motion by others. This realization ignited a new form of anger, protective, almost feral. Naomi felt cornered by circumstances beyond her control. She had not chosen this battlefield, yet she stood at its center. The instinct to shield the child collided with the impulse to expose everything. Silence might protect temporarily, but transparency could disrupt those who operated in shadows. Her isolation deepened as trust eroded. Friends offered sympathy, but not certainty. Family members advised caution, each suggestion laced with subtle self-interest. Naomi began to see alliances not as support systems, but as calculations. The world around her felt transactional, every gesture potentially strategic. Internally, she grappled with a darker question. Was she prepared to raise Jacob's child alone in an environment saturated with suspicion and ambition? Love did not automatically generate strength. Some days she felt resolute, convinced the child was her chance to reclaim narrative, to assert permanence in a world that had tried to erase her place. Other days she felt overwhelmed by resentment, resenting the unborn life for intensifying her vulnerability. The longer she delayed announcement, the more explosive the eventual revelation would become. Naomi recognized that secrecy itself could be weaponized against her. If others discovered the pregnancy before she disclosed it, they could frame her silence as manipulation. Control was slipping through her fingers, and the illusion of managing perception began to fracture. When rumors finally surfaced in verified whispers that Naomi had been seen at medical appointments, the pressure became unbearable. She understood that concealment was no longer viable. The choice before her was no longer whether to reveal the pregnancy, but how. The decision to confirm the truth publicly required calculated courage. Naomi prepared for backlash, for accusations, for scrutiny of timelines and motives. She braced herself for questions about Jacob's loyalty, about her own integrity. What she did not anticipate was the intensity of her own emotional release when the secret was no longer hers alone to carry. The aftermath was immediate and chaotic. Jacob's family recalibrated strategies overnight. Legal documents were re-examined. Power dynamics shifted. Some expressed cautious acceptance. Others displayed barely concealed hostility. The child transformed from abstract possibility into tangible disruption. Naomi's internal conflict did not resolve with disclosure. If anything, it intensified. Now that the pregnancy was known, she confronted a new reality. She was both grieving widow and potential gatekeeper of legacy. Sympathy coexisted with suspicion. Support arrived intertwined with expectation. Through it all, her anger evolved. It was no longer directed solely at Jacob or at fate. It targeted the environment that reduced her pregnancy to leverage. She refused to allow her child to become a bargaining chip. Yet asserting that autonomy required strength she was still gathering. The ultimate question lingered, not about the existence of the secret, but about its consequences. The child would inherit not only Jacob's bloodline, but the fractures he left behind. Naomi understood that protecting this life meant confronting forces determined to shape its future for their own gain. In the end, the secret of Naomi's pregnancy was not simply about concealed life. It was about power, legitimacy, and survival in a landscape where grief was politicized and love complicated by ambition. Whether the child would become symbol of redemption or catalyst for deeper conflict remained uncertain. What was clear was that Naomi would no longer allow herself to be cornered by silence. The truth, once revealed, had ignited a different kind of battle, one she was prepared to fight. Not out of loyalty to Jacob's memory, but out of fierce determination to define her own future and the destiny of the life growing within her.